I wouldn't suspend him. It does not look good when you threaten a fan, especially when you keep saying, as Jalen Rose pointed out earlier, I promise you and everything. You're trying to make that threat sound as credible as possible, particularly when you then extend that threat to a female fan. And so you're right. I think a fine is probably in order. I would also say that the fan, you're right. Also, it's hard to say what is real and what isn't. If it is true, though, that what he had on social media is what's being reported, and by the way, the fact that he then deletes stuff or makes it private makes you more suspicious, and more you suspect increasingly that it is true, then the fan does not deserve the benefit of the doubt. And what Jalen also said earlier, I think, is right on the money. It should not be on the players to constantly have to point out who's making either racial insults or physical threats to players. And I don't know what a red card is supposed to mean. Get the fan out of there, immediately.
There shouldn't be a red card. The fan should be ejected immediately. There's no question about that. And at least banned for an entire season, at the very least. That's number one. Number two, I think that it's important to recognize that there is provocation involved. Like Russell Westbrook didn't just mouth off or sound off going to that degree. I mean, he had to basically correct himself and remind everybody he's never hit a woman, nor would he ever put his hands on a woman. He had to remind it because he said, what was caught on video, I'm going to F you up, you and your wife. And so when you're caught on video saying something like that, the NBA has to fine them, and I believe that they will. And here's the biggest reason, Will, I brought this up earlier, why you have to fine them. You have to make sure you provide any kind of cautionary deterrent to make sure that nothing comes close to what transpired when Ron Artest went into the stands at the Palace in Auburn Hills. To cover the NBA at that time the way that I did, to see how it rocked the foundation of the NBA, I cannot say enough, because as unfortunate and as incredibly unfair as it may be, you had people that were looking at that incident as an excuse to stigmatize and denigrate an abundance of players, if not practically every black player. And so when you look at it from that perspective, particularly when you're talking about the Utah Jazz and their fan base, the Mormon state and how they talk to J.R. Smith, or they talk to Allen Iverson, or they talk to various other dudes, because their belief is, and I won't say them, I'm not trying to label all fans or anything like that, but that's a very rabid fan base, and they're incredibly passionate because their basketball team is all that they have. You do have a segment of our populace at various locales in this country who believe you're supposed to look a certain way, present yourself a certain way, and act a certain way. And anything that deviates from that, they view you as a privileged individual who's lucky to be in this position. Because if you weren't in this position, you'd probably be in jail. This is how they talk to these players. This is how they act towards these players. I'm not saying everybody. I'm not saying most. I'm saying the few idiots and the ignorant ones that do these kind of things. So it gives them a license to come at guys like this and talk to them any kind of way, because it's a reminder to those players. We still believe we're above you, that you're beneath us. You're just fortunate enough to know how to play this game and make this money. Otherwise, you'd be a hoodlum, or whatever word you want to use to describe them. That's how they treat these players. And provocation has to play a role, because there's so much a player can take.
I'm a little pessimistic, guys, on the NBA's ability to control fan behavior like this. Like, you can ban this singular guy. You can ban this guy if the investigation comes back, and he did say those things. But what you're dealing with is this internal conflict, right? Fans want to heckle players. They should. You should create a home court advantage. You should come after players, but there's obviously a line. And Stephen A., you're pointing out, and by the way, I readily believe you, there's not just one, two, but there are a lot of fans who go way over that line. So how do you stop that? How do you say, we want you to boo and heckle and have a fun time and create a home court advantage, but don't go over this line, because there's people, this, all over the place who don't see or know lines. And I think the answer is, I don't think the NBA can do much. I actually think these things do it, I think video, shame, putting people out there, showing where they go over the line. I actually think this, in the end, is the biggest deterrent. I don't think the NBA can kick everybody out who goes over the line.
I don't think that. I think this individual definitely deserves the heavy hand of
Sure.
the NBA. I don't believe a word that he said. You know, he didn't say this. He just told Russell Westbrook to ice his knee. He's lying through his teeth. It's a bogus story. I don't believe it for 1 second. But I also would remind folks of this as well. I was at the Kansas City Chiefs Los Angeles Rams game. And ESPN had the suite in the end zone, ESPN LA, your station, right? The tailgate party, and then after that, they had the stuff. This particular fan was in the crowd yelling some of the most ridiculous stuff in the world at me, and he was really getting out of hand to the point where security was going to remove him. And I looked at the guy, said, calm down, be cool. And I told the security, leave him alone. The guy actually looked at me and said, thank you, and calmed down.
Because he realized the WWE of it all.
Exactly.
The wrestling, professional wrestling show of it all has crossed the line. And if he wants to continue to be there, he has to calm down.
But he appreciated the fact that I didn't have him removed because they were going to remove him. And I said, no, he's just drinking. He's at the football game. He's getting wild. And I looked at him and I said, just calm down with the language. And so even though he continued to heckle me, it was all in good fun. But unfortunately, there are some instances with fans you can't talk to like that. And they're very violent, they're very vicious because they bring their hate.
Of course.
To you.
And also sometimes people are drinking and that kind of thing. One thing, Stephen A., because you're at a lot of games, I mean, Max also, Wayne and Will. But if they're going to start ejecting fans based on this behavior, is there enough security in the arena right now to even do that?
I don't think there's enough security to eject an abundance, but I do think that you can rely on the decency and the soul of most people in this country where they see, all right, this is crossing the line.
Yeah.
All right, most of us are not acting like that. A few ignorant fools should not stigmatize us all. And I think in this country you can trust that it's a few. It's not all or most folks that would do that.
That's an awesome point. I think the decency of people will point out those that go over the line.